Looking back, looking forward, November 2023. Over the past 8 years, my friends and colleagues Ross Buckley at the University of New South Wales in Australia and Dirk Zetsche at the University of Luxembourg and I have spent a great deal of time looking into issues around the interrelationship between finance, technology, broader sustainable development, and the role of law and regulation. And I think as we start COP28, the annual meeting of the parties to discuss issues around climate change in particular, but also issues around broader considerations of sustainable development, it's a good time to revisit some of those issues. And Ross, Dirk, and I have just published a new book, a book called FinTech, Finance, Technology, and Regulation. And in FinTech, we analyze the evolution of technology and finance, a process that we highlight as co-developmental over the history of settled human civilization. We focus particularly on a process of electrification, digitization, and datafication, beginning from around 150 years ago, what we call FinTech 1.0, with the first transatlantic telegraph cable. We discuss the evolution up to the present and highlight really over the past 15 years in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, how there has been this entirely new way of thinking and development, what has come to be called FinTech. FinTech has brought together a range of new technologies, new participants, and seeks to do finance in a different way. And we highlight how not only has technology changed finance, but also how technology has changed regulation itself, in particular from the standpoint of using technology for regulatory purposes in the context of compliance, regulation, and supervision, the ideas of RegTech and SoupTech. And what we highlight is that one needs to take a balanced approach, that technology can have very important benefits from the standpoint of sustainable development, but it also brings with it risks from the standpoint of financial stability or monetary stability, consumer protection, market integrity, as well as needs from the standpoint of standardization to support efficiencies. We go from this base to then analyze a series of some of the most important new technologies which we've seen coming into financial services over the past decade, in particular distributed ledger technology, blockchain, decentralized finance, artificial intelligence, and various forms of data. And we analyze each of these and come up with not only an analysis of the opportunities and risks, appropriate regulatory responses, but we draw from these case studies to argue for an overall approach from the standpoint of regulation, that regulation should take a balanced, risk-based, proportional approach to new technologies from the standpoint of finance, and that it's very important for regulators to have opportunities for testing and learning about new technologies and new business models, the ideas of regulatory sandboxes, but also more widely to encourage development through innovation hubs. We then turn to the question of some of the most important transformations we've seen over the past decade and a half, and that has been in the context of digital financial inclusion, particularly in countries such as China or India. And drawing from these lessons, we highlight the role of digital inclusion, of digital public infrastructure, and digital financial infrastructure. In particular, the power of the combination of mobile phone and internet access, the ability to make and receive electronic payments, and the availability of accounts from the standpoint of resilience, from the standpoint of financial inclusion, and from the standpoint of financial sector development. In our analysis, this then must be paired with an appropriate regulatory approach, which is that idea of a proportional risk-based graduated approach combined with use of technology, RegTech and SoupTech. And all of this works best in the context of an appropriately enabling legal and research and development ecosystem, particularly rules around such things as data as well as support for innovation. And finally, we analyze some of the emerging risks, what we categorize in the context of FinTech 4.0, the emergence of economies of scope and scale in finance combined with network effects of data to bring entirely new tech risks, particularly from the standpoint of cybersecurity, concentration and dominance, and data protection. Looking forward, we argue that it is essential that policymakers take these lessons into account to maximize the benefits of finance and technology to our societies while at the same time minimizing the risks. And these are the key to sustainable development.